In this video, I'm going to cover the hours of service rules as it affects the contractor so you have a better understanding of our day-to-day operations and how the actual rules apply. Before I get into the actual hours of service and how it affects your contract, I want to talk a little bit about breaks because this is where I see a lot of issues happen with drivers and they get in trouble. And you may or may not have heard this where a driver reports to duty and they go, I don't have any hours. Well, part of that problem is they have not taken a long enough break to warrant them to have clean hours to start their shift. So your driver needs a full 10 hours off in between shifts. And this is where they get in trouble. They come back at 9 hours and 55 minutes and they go on duty and they get on the drive line and it messes up their hours. And then it messes up their whole week because they came back too soon from their break. So when you're talking to your drivers and you're training your drivers, make sure to teach them how to track when they come off duty. Now remember, we're an overnight operation and your drivers are tired when they come off duty overnight. And so make sure that they understand, okay, I logged out of my ELD at 8 a.m. this morning. They have to wait a full 10 hours before they can log back in. If they log in any sooner than that, they're going to have problems with their ELD and they're not going to have the hours to run. So teach them to say, take a screenshot of your phone or set a 10-hour timer or some tip or trick for drivers that keep having issues with coming back from their break too soon. So that's the everyday thing. Now there's a 34-hour break, so a driver has a total of 70 hours in which they can operate, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But to get a clean set of hours, a driver should take a 34-hour reset. And this will get them in trouble also. They get done with their shift on a Friday and they're supposed to run again on Sunday and they don't track when they logged out of the ELD. And they just don't check. That's the real problem is when they get off duty, they just, forgot or whatever. And then they come back, they get back into the truck and on the drive line too soon. And then they don't have a clean 34-hour reset, which is going to cause all sorts of headaches for you during the week. So this is an important part of teaching your drivers the right things to do, to say, hey, make sure you take your 10-hour break and your 34-hour break properly and make sure you have your full break before we get into running for the day. Okay, so you've got the driver has a solid 10 hours or their 34-hour break and they're good to go at that point. So then what are we dealing with when we're operating? So we have 11 hours that the driver can be on the drive line. You got to be thinking about things that are going on in your day-to-day operations. Are you going through high traffic areas? Are you coming through Atlanta or Nashville or Charlotte or Houston? What are the things that your driver is going to be dealing with that could affect that 11 hours? That'll slow that driver down. So be thinking about that's the most that they can be on the drive line for their shift is 11 hours. Now, a lot of our drivers are driving from terminal to terminal and, doing a solo run, and it's about 4 hours out, 4 hours back, usually about an hour on the turn. So that's 9 hours. You only got 2 hours left on that 11 hours to drive. So be thinking of that and encourage your drivers to be efficient when they get to the turn and make sure that they are doing the things that they're supposed to be doing. Don't be lollygagging around. Use the yard move feature, and I'll talk a little bit about that. And make sure that they are keeping an idea of where they are on their 11 hours for the day. Then they have 14 hours in which to operate in. And that's talking about, they arrive at the truck lot, they're doing their pre-trip inspection, they're doing, the things to get ready for their shift. They're driving from the truck lot over to the terminal, they're finding their trailers, they're trying to get this done, that's all eating into that clock. So you need to have good discussions with your drivers and teach them, okay, when you arrive at a terminal, you are going to hit the gate. You're going to talk to the guard. You're going to go into yard move. You're going to do this. That's how you need to talk to your drivers. Don't assume they know what to do and how to do everything. You need to make sure that you optimize how they are operating and say, okay, I know that you are going to go to 303. It's coming into this gate. You're going to go into yard move. You're going to go over to the left, go to the, get your drop your trailers off, go to the right, find the dolly pit, whatever you need to do, find your other trailers and do that. So that eats into that 14-hour clock. And then they have a total of 70 hours for the week. Now, this is where it can get very iffy for contractors is if you're pushing a driver to 6 days, which a lot of you are, then they're going to run out of hours. And you got to be careful of that, especially the driver that may drive for you 5 days a week and then they drive for another contractor 1 day a week. The driver is responsible for keeping track of their hours and reporting. Now, Linehaul has ways of tracking drivers through their FedEx ID to make sure that, they stay within their 70 hours. But this is still problematic that the driver can go over their 70 hours pretty quick because they're running 6 days a week. And that type of schedule makes it almost impossible to stay in the 70 hours. And this is where a lot of the hours problems come into play. I have a lot of drivers that do not understand the proper use of the 30-minute break. They just don't. And I'm going to help you understand it so you can explain it to your drivers and have a lot better success. We have a lot of drivers that feel like they must drive the 8 hours, and then, as the ELD is going to that eighth hour, they're going to pull over on the emergency lane and take their 30-minute break. Taking a 30-minute break on an active interstate in the emergency lane is a dangerous condition. Do not put your drivers into that situation. Do not. So let them know that. I always tell drivers to take their 30-minute break within the 4 to 6 hours. So let's go with a solo driver. A solo driver goes, leaves Terminal 1, goes to Terminal 2. They arrive at the other terminal and they drop trailers, pick up trailers, and start heading back. Where the drivers get in trouble in that scenario is they do not take a full 30-minute break at the turn. So you got to tell them, when you go from, 303 in Atlanta and you're going to Olive Branch, when you get to Olive Branch, you got to be there for 30 minutes. Usually I tell them 33 to 35 minutes. Set a timer on your clock or on your phone, just something that you take the full 30 minutes on the turn. The same thing with drivers that are going on bumps. They're going out, they're going to a bump, and the aggravating thing that happens is one driver is on time, they arrive, whoop, I'm here, and then the other driver's running late or being lazy or whatever. And then what happens is the driver that's on time is mad. They're ticked off. They're angry that the other one was late. Now I'm going to go back through, Atlanta at 5 o'clock traffic instead of 3:30 traffic. And now I'm ticked off. So instead of waiting the full 30 minutes or whatever on the other driver, then they get mad, they get in a fight, and they take off, and then we have a 30-minute break problem. So the problem with the 30-minute break is because it's coming off the drive line, it can't be fixed. There is no fix for the 30-minute break violation. If your driver commits the 30-minute break violation, you're done. That's it. And you're going to get a report from line haul. They're going to ask what's going on. And I've had drivers that have been disqualified for having too many 30-minute break violations. And a lot of times they're missing it by 10 seconds, 15 seconds, 20 seconds, a minute. It's not like they're egregious about this, but this is what's really going on. So talk to your drivers. The ones that are on bumps, let them know. Hey, got to do the full 30 to 35 minutes at the bump. Hey, you're going to the terminal. Better do the full 30 to 35. Do not take those breaks in the emergency lane on the interstate. We've had very bad accidents because of that, and we're not going to do that anymore. This is one of the most misunderstood exemptions that we deal with all contractor drivers, is they think that they can use personal conveyance for any reason. Personal conveyance can only be used for personal moves of a commercial motor vehicle. It's generally acceptable to be used by team drivers. Your team drivers are out on the road and they make it to their destination city and they need to go to Walmart to go buy groceries. Using personal conveyance from where they're parked to go to Walmart to get groceries is a legal use of personal conveyance. It's a legal use for them to go to the casino. It's a legal use for them to go to the movies or go do laundry or anything like that. It is not legal to go from a truck lot to a terminal. It is not legal to go drop a trailer an hour later and then go home because you dropped a trailer at the Walmart. That's not legal. You can't use it to further the commercial motor vehicle closer to the destination. You can't use it to go fuel. You can't use it to go to the repair shop. You can't use it for any of that. So stop doing that. You cannot use personal conveyance for that. Line haul looks for this stuff. They run reports. They will send you an email that says, hey, personal conveyance was used for 3 hours down Interstate 80. What gives? Now, you can use personal conveyance bobtailing from Portland, Oregon to Ocoee, Florida. That's legal. There is no distance that is allowed, but it has to be used for personal use. You can't use it for moving trailers or going to the terminal or, like I said, going to the truck wash, going for maintenance, going for gas and fuel and all that. Can't do it. So stop using personal conveyance for that. And if you have a driver that has a excessive use of personal conveyance, you can turn it off in the ELD so they cannot use personal conveyance. This is another one that contractors really have a tough time understanding the proper use of adverse conditions. There are situations, and the FMCSA allows motor carriers to use adverse conditions, but it has to be used appropriately. So let's talk about where contractors get in trouble with. They driver runs out of hours. They either have a route that is very difficult to run, and the driver just doesn't have enough hours to do that run because of the metropolitan areas they're going through or whatever. And they'll go, yeah, I run out of hours about, 3/4 of the way through my shift, and I just use adverse conditions because there's traffic in that metropolitan area, and I'll just add the adverse conditions to that. That's really not how adverse conditions is supposed to be utilized. So let's talk about traffic. A proper use of adverse conditions is, when you're driving down the interstate and you go and all of a sudden the traffic comes to a complete stop and you're stopped there for 30 minutes to an hour and you find out it's because it's a major accident occurred. That's adverse conditions. That would allow the driver to extend the hours in that situation. Another one that's often used is weather. Here's the thing. Is the condition foreseeable to the driver? If the answer to that question is yes, then you cannot use adverse condition. If the answer to that is no, then you possibly can use adverse conditions in that situation. So let's talk about a snowstorm. You are driving in the northern area of the United States. The weather states, oh, we're getting a major snowstorm and we're going to have snow for the next 2 days. You cannot use adverse conditions in that world because it is foreseeable that your driver is going to encounter a snowstorm. Now, let's say, like in this picture here, your driver is going through Oklahoma and a tornado goes through. Might not be foreseeable for that day. The conditions weren't right. There was no notification that there was going to be a tornado or something like that. Could be that, you're in Oklahoma, but there is a much better chance of saying, it wasn't foreseeable that I was going to come into that condition to, use that exemption. Now, adverse conditions allows you to extend the hours by 2 hours. 2 hours of driving time and 2 hours of on-duty time. And the number one thing to remember on that is to annotate the log properly. Here's one of the things I see from drivers all the time. Drivers' annotation of a log is they take their fingers and they just go, just a bunch of letters, and that's not a proper annotation. So the proper annotation would be, I was stopped, which you can see from the ELD, for 45 minutes due to a major accident on Interstate 40 in Conroe, Arkansas. That's a proper annotation of adverse condition. So teach your drivers on what is proper and go through those things with the driver. Teach your drivers how to properly use yard move. This is the best way to save the hours that they have when they're operating during the day. So the way I always talk to drivers about this, as soon as you get to the gate at the terminal, stop, put yourself in yard move. Remember, they have to stay under 15 miles an hour to stay in yard move. Should be pretty easy since the speed limit at every FedEx terminal is 10 miles per hour. Make sure that you stay under that and then that they stay in yard move. This will really help with them saving their hours and just get them in the habit of doing that. Show them how to do it. During your road test, when you were, teaching them the ropes and going through all of your onboarding training, go through the exercise. We're going to the gate. Move the yard move. On the yard, then make sure that they stay in yard move for at least 30 to 35 minutes to make sure that they got that 30-minute break covered and, that they don't have any issues. But teach them how to use yard move properly.